My name is Marsha Skrypuch, and I'm the author of Call Me Aram. Call Me Aram is based on a true story of a group of 50 young boys who are survivors of the Armenian genocide, and they came to Canada in 1923. Call Me Aram is a sequel to the book that came out in 2006 called Aram's Choice. Aram's Choice was about the boys' journey to Canada, and this book is about their first summer in Canada. So these are, well, by this time there's about 47 of them, because 3 were held back for health purposes in Paris, France. So these 47 boys arrive in Georgetown, Ontario. They don't speak any English at all, and they don't even have anyone who can translate for them. And the people who are looking after them on the farm is the Reverend and his wife, and they speak no Armenian, they just speak English. So this is the first morning that Aram has breakfast at the Georgetown Boys Farm. The door to the farmhouse opened, and Reverend Edward stepped out. He carried a huge steaming pot. Grunting from the weight of it, he set it in the middle of the picnic table, and then he smiled. Mrs. Edwards followed with a tray stacked with bowls. She set the tray down beside the pot. Pointing to Zavin, she motioned for him to step forward. Zavin scrambled out of his seat, an anxious look in his eyes. The Reverend's wife handed him a bowl and motioned for him to hold it up in front of the Reverend. Reverend Edwards swirled a huge ladle into the pot and drew it out. It was filled with something steamy, gluey, and gray. He glopped it into Zavin's bowl and grinned. All the boys watched nervously as they waited for their friend to sniff it. Zavin wrinkled his nose in disgust. The boys groaned. "Mmm," said Mrs. Edwards, rubbing her stomach and pointing at the glop. "Oatmeal porridge." None of the boys spoke English, and Aram had no idea what oatmeal porridge meant. He knew that it was something to eat in the morning. It looked as if Mrs. Edwards thought it was tasty. How he wished that the Reverend and his wife spoke Armenian. She motioned for the next boy to approach, and then the next. Each boy went up to the front, and each said, "Thank you," which was one of the few phrases they had learned in English. When it was Aram's turn, he thanked Mrs. Edwards as she served him his steamy mess. He carried it back to his place. He sat down, and he stared into the bowl. It looked even worse up close. Aram had eaten orange peels and apple cores. He had eaten food out of garbage heaps, but he had never eaten goo, and lumpy gray goo at that. The smell reminded him of dirt after rain. Aram looked around. All the boys were staring into their bowls, but no one had dipped their spoons. Then Reverend Edwards served big bowls of the goo for himself and his wife. Aram watched as they sprinkled the glop with sugar and poured some milk onto it. "Good porridge!" exclaimed Reverend Edwards. Aram's stomach grumbled. He sprinkled his porridge with a bit of sugar and poured some milk over it too. As he dipped his spoon into the porridge, he looked up. All eyes were on him. He put the spoon into his mouth. Horrible! Porridge tasted as bad as it looked. Aram was about to crumble his face in disgust when he caught a glimpse of the Reverend and his wife. They looked so anxious to please. He didn't want to hurt their feelings, so he swallowed it. "How is it?" asked Mikhail. "I haven't decided," said Aram, taking another spoonful. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to be the only one eating this stuff either.